Okay, I am Derek Lambert, and I am debating the affirmative for legalizing marijuana in the U.S. for recreational use. Last week I debated negative, now I'm going to be looking at the other side. To start off, marijuana is the most abused drug in the world, not just the U.S., but the world. 40% of Americans have claimed to have at least tried marijuana in their lifetime. So I'm going to be going over some of the things that the negative uh, debates, which is the health risks. I'm going to kind of dispute some of those, the addictiveness, and then I'm going to go over some of the health benefits and the economic values to legalizing marijuana for recreational use. Recreational use differs from medical use, whereas medical use is strictly used for illnesses and treating patients. Recreational use is more kind of doing whatever you want with it once you have it in your hands. Some of the health risks that the negative argues for not legalizing marijuana for recreational use is that it can cause cancer with some of the carcinogens that are claimed to be in marijuana, the addictiveness and the effect on the youth, etc. As far as the health risks, there isn't enough statistical data or not enough studies have been done to back that up. And what I say to that is just that if marijuana were to be legalized for recreational purposes, we would have the opportunity to conduct those studies and to find out how dangerous or beneficial it could be for us. When you compare it to some of the things that are legal, like tobacco and alcohol, the Huffington Post found that alcohol has a 73% harm rating to its users on a scale of 100. Alcohol topped the list, and it's legal and consumed by millions upon millions, especially people like in our age range that are in college. Also, at the top of the list, alcohol was ahead of heroin, crack cocaine, methamphetamine, cocaine powder, tobacco, and amphetamine. And then after all those was cannabis, marijuana. So tobacco and alcohol, both legal, are higher on the harm list for users than marijuana. So to say that marijuana is super harmful to us, we shouldn't legalize it, it's kind of a crazy statement when you look at the stats of how dangerous alcohol and tobacco are to us. Two of the highest causes of preventable death in America. Also, the addictiveness. A lot of people on the negative argue that marijuana is extremely addictive. People can become addicts and go on to other drugs. But actually, marijuana leads to dependency in only 9 to 10% of its users, as found by the Huffington Post. And also, Time Magazine found that only 9% of users can usually become addicted to marijuana, which shows two different studies in general, around 10%, 1/10 roughly, of marijuana users actually become addicted, which is far lower than tobacco and alcohol users. Also, tobacco hooks 30% of its users become addicted to tobacco. So almost a third of tobacco users become addicted, legal. Marijuana, illegal, only around 10%. So a pretty big difference there. Also, whether or not marijuana is a gateway drug, I would say no. Most studies show that although there is a correlation between marijuana users and then users going on to harder drugs, they usually started out with marijuana. It's not causation. It's not a cause and effect that if you smoke marijuana, you will end up becoming a crackhead or a meth head and losing your home to pay for meth. No, it doesn't work like that. Anyways, moving on to some of the health benefits. The National Cancer Institution found that patients who ingested cannabis before sleeping had a more restful night's sleep. So that's something that not necessarily used medically for medical purposes, but it is a health benefit that it can help you sleep better. They also found that while marijuana isn't found to cure cancer, it can help stabilize cancer cells and help it from spreading or growing to other parts of the body, which obviously is a good thing. Cancer is one of the top leading killers in America too, so why not legalize something that could be helpful for that? Moving on to the economic value, Harvard economist Jeffrey Myron calculated that if marijuana were legalized for recreational purposes, that the government would save 7.7 billion annually on law enforcement costs. The government would also bring in 6.2 billion a year if marijuana was taxed, like alcohol and like tobacco. So that's 13.9 billion a year that the government would bring in on a national scale, estimated, to use whatever they want with it. Our country's kind of in not a depression but a recession, and we're struggling financially, so 13.9 billion sounds pretty good. The Washington Post, studies show that legalization of marijuana in Colorado and Washington could generate as much as 811.2 billion before 2020. Washington State could bring in 637 million by 2019 is what is expected for them, and then Colorado could bring in 174.5 million by 2017. 30% of that will go to the state's general fund, while the rest will go towards specific use by the law. So that's 186 million for lawmakers to help make our country better. And those two states, they're the only two states that have marijuana legalized for recreational purposes. So yet it is a small scale. It's only 2 out of 50 states that can make these studies because they have it legalized. But just those two states, you think about it, 48 more states did have legalized marijuana for recreational use, how much more revenue we could bring in and kind of help try and stabilize our country financially a little bit. So just to kind of recap, the health risks, alcohol and tobacco have been shown to be much more dangerous for our body, much more harm, lead to more addictiveness and more issues aside from our health, financially, with our families, etc. Then there's the health benefits of marijuana helping people sleep. You hear people taking melatonin to help them sleep. That's a drug, although not one that's highly speculated like marijuana, but it does have its benefits that we could use along with having it legalized for recreational use. The addictiveness and it being a gateway drug, like I said, only 1 in 10 on average users of marijuana get addicted to marijuana, so it's really not very addictive. And then the economic value, 13.9 billion a year could bring in for our nation to use, which would be great. So I think the marijuana should be legalized for recreational use for these reasons.